In the vast and vibrant heart of Africa, a new empire is rising, not of kingdoms or conquests, but batteries, blueprints, and electric dreams. While Europe fumbled with hesitation and legacy baggage, China moved swiftly, silently, and strategically. The battleground? Africa's booming electric vehicle future. The stakes? Nothing less than control of the next global auto frontier. Africa is no longer a market waiting to be served. It's a force shaping its own future. With over 1.4 billion people, a fast-growing urban population, and abundant clean energy potential, Africa represents the last major frontier for global car makers. But there's a twist. Africa is skipping the gasoline age. Instead of retrofitting fossil-fueled infrastructure, nations like Nigeria, Kenya, Rwanda, and Ghana are leapfrogging directly into electric mobility. And that's exactly where China stepped in. While European automakers debated over regulations, carbon credits, and legacy models, China executed a masterstroke. It combined state-backed loans, low-cost manufacturing, and an aggressive push by EV giants like BYD, Chery, and Geely directly into African soil. China didn't just sell cars. It built battery plants in Morocco, offered EV assembly partnerships in Nigeria, launched infrastructure projects in Ethiopia, and provided charging stations bundled into road deals. This wasn't just business. It was strategy. Every vehicle shipped, every battery installed, every handshake with minister, chipped away at Europe's old auto dominance. Europe had the legacy, the engineering, the brands, but also the baggage. Caught in red tape and environmental balancing acts, EU automakers failed to see Africa as a partner. Instead, they treated it as a market for outdated combustion models or second-hand exports. The result? African policymakers turned to China, which offered what Europe wouldn't: custom EV solutions, local jobs, and scalable tech. In this battle of vision versus vanity, China came prepared. Europe came late. Today, Chinese EVs are becoming commonplace on African streets. From Lagos to Kigali, their names may not yet dominate the West, but in Africa, they symbolize progress, affordability, and modernity. And it's not just cars. China controls 60% of the world's EV battery production and owns stakes in African lithium, cobalt, and rare earth mines. This isn't just a commercial victory. It's a resource mobility empire being built in real time. Asterisk. Meanwhile, Europe watches with shrinking influence and mounting questions. So what does this mean for Africa's future? Will the continent fully embrace Chinese EV dominance? Or is there still room for Europe to respond and reinvent? What's clear is this: Africa is no longer just a consumer in the global auto race. It's a battlefield, a blueprint, and maybe the birthplace of a new global auto order. And China is driving in the fast lane. The auto war has only just begun. At the heart of this war is something far deeper than vehicles. It's about what powers them: lithium, cobalt, nickel, manganese. Africa holds over 30% of the world's key minerals needed for EV batteries. And China has been quietly securing those resources for over a decade. Through long-term mining contracts in the Democratic Republic of Congo, strategic infrastructure for resources deals, and even owning stakes in African mining companies, Beijing now holds the keys to the electric future. Europe, on the other hand, is scrambling. With resource access limited and geopolitical tensions rising, the EU is now dependent on both African cooperation and Chinese supply chains, a dangerous place to be in a global power game. Here's where the deeper game unfolds. China is not just exporting EVs. It's exporting entire ecosystems. Battery recycling plants in South Africa, charging networks in East Africa, electric bus corridors in Kenya. These aren't donations, they're leverage points. Every Chinese-built factory, data-linked EV, and grid-connected charger becomes part of a digital and physical infrastructure web. Africa's mobility future is being built, yes, but with Chinese software, Chinese standards, and Chinese dependencies. Asterisk if Africa doesn't balance its partnerships, it risks trading European control for Chinese influence. But here's the twist. Africa is not a passive player in this game. A new generation of African leaders, engineers, and entrepreneurs are rising, determined to build indigenous EV brands, create local battery innovation hubs, and negotiate smarter deals with both East and West. From Uganda's Kiera Motors to Nigeria's Jet EV and Ethiopia's new EV assembly policies, Africa is learning fast and demanding more. More jobs, more tech transfer, more sovereignty over its road to electrification. The real battle isn't just China versus Europe. It's about who truly partners with Africa and who pretends to. So, is China building an unstoppable auto empire? Is Europe too late to reclaim ground? Or is Africa about to rewrite the rules and become a global EV powerhouse in its own right? One thing for sure, the next phase of this war won't be fought in factories. It will be fought in software, energy grids, rare earth diplomacy, and the hearts of the next billion drivers. And Africa may be the biggest winner of them all. Let's start with Uganda, home to Kiera Motors, Africa's first indigenous EV manufacturer. Born from a student project and backed by the Ugandan government, Kiera is building solar-powered buses and electric vehicles tailored for African terrain. They're not just assembling, they're designing, engineering, and innovating on African soil. In East Africa, Kenya is emerging as the electric motorbike capital of the continent. With cities like Nairobi choked by petrol fumes and traffic, companies like Opibus, now Rome, are replacing gas-powered bikes with clean, quiet EVs made for delivery riders, commuters, and the boda-boda economy. Meanwhile, in West Africa, Ghana is betting big on clean energy infrastructure and local EV assembly plants. The country is offering tax breaks, grid incentives, and public-private partnerships to attract both foreign and domestic players. Ghana isn't just importing tech. It's setting the policy stage for homegrown disruption. What makes this moment unique isn't just technological. It's political and economic sovereignty. African leaders are finally in a position to play China and Europe against each other, extracting better deals and demanding technology transfer. Unlike the past, where infrastructure deals were one-sided, today's negotiations involve EV battery labs, local workforce training, and continent-wide electromobility policies. Africa is no longer just asking for products. It's asking for partnerships with purpose. And that's forcing both China and Europe to rethink their approaches fast. But there's an even bigger race just beginning, the race for EV software, charging infrastructure, and smart mobility data. China is already embedding its charging tech and IoT systems into African cities. Think data link chargers, app-controlled energy usage, and vehicles that feed directly into smart grids. But European firms, especially from Germany and Sweden, are now scrambling to introduce AI navigation, payment systems, and smart charging networks that don't just sell vehicles, but plug into Africa's urban future. Whoever wins this layer, the digital backbone of mobility, won't just sell cars. They'll own the roads, the data, and the decisions. In the 20th century, oil powered empires. In the 21st, it's data. And as African roads become more connected through electric vehicles, autonomous sensors, and ride-sharing platforms, a new data war is quietly emerging. Every EV sends data: location, driver behavior, energy consumption, traffic patterns. This isn't just useful for automakers. It's geostrategic gold. Asterisk. And here's the twist. Most of that data is being processed not in Lagos or Nairobi, but in Beijing and Shenzhen. Asterisk through cloud-linked apps. Chinese companies are not only selling mobility, they're harvesting patterns that could shape logistics, city planning, even elections. Asterisk. So what about Europe? Can it recover lost ground? The EU has launched the Global Gateway Initiative, a €300 billion plan to counter China's Belt and Road, with a special focus on digital infrastructure, energy, and transport in Africa. But critics say it's too slow, too bureaucratic, and lacks the sharp edge of China's deal-making machine. While Europe discusses pilot programs, China cuts ribbon after ribbon. Still, there is hope. Germany and France are now forming direct tech alliances with African EV startups. Scandinavian firms are introducing clean charging tech in off-grid rural zones. And European universities are offering African engineers full scholarships for EV innovation. A pivot may be possible, but time is running out. But maybe, just maybe, the biggest change isn't between East and West. It's South rising. The global South, led by African nations, is no longer following the rules of old empires. Instead of choosing sides, Africa is choosing sovereignty. Instead of importing ideas, it's exporting innovation. Instead of being a consumer of foreign futures, it's becoming a co-author of global transformation. The auto war may have started with foreign giants, but the final chapter could be written by a Pan-African EV ecosystem, one that's self-charging, solar-powered, affordable, and designed for its people, not foreign shareholders. Right now, under the radar, African nations are quietly forming regional EV alliances, coalitions not built on colonial legacy, but shared opportunity. The African Continental Free Trade Area, AFCFTA, is removing trade barriers, making it easier for EV parts to move from Morocco to Nigeria, from Rwanda to Ghana. Imagine this. Solar-powered EVs manufactured in Ethiopia, with batteries from Zimbabwe, assembled in Kenya, and sold tariff-free across 50-plus African markets. That's not fiction. It's the blueprint already being drafted behind closed doors in Kigali, Accra, and Addis Ababa. For the first time, Africa has a chance to build not just a local industry, but a continent-wide supply chain, one that doesn't need to ask permission from Beijing or Brussels. But this vision is fragile, very fragile. Political instability, corruption, unreliable power grids, and foreign pressure could easily derail Africa's EV momentum. There are already signs of trouble. Foreign automakers lobbying African leaders to delay clean vehicle policies, disinformation campaigns pushing against Chinese tech control, and internal rivalries between nations over who leads battery manufacturing. If Africa falls into the trap of dependency, if its leaders sell infrastructure without demanding knowledge transfer, if foreign investors dictate the terms, this revolution could quietly die before it truly begins. We now stand at a critical crossroad. Africa can be the testing ground for other nations' EV ambitions, or it can become the headquarters of its own future. The difference will be made not by global CEOs, but by local engineers, policymakers, and visionaries. It's a question of mindset. Will Africa license software or develop its own? Will it assemble cars or own the patents? Will it be an EV colony or the driver of a new global order? China has outsmarted Europe, yes. But now the question is, will Africa outsmart them both? Africa has long been the stage for the ambitions of others, a place where foreign empires came to extract, to impose, to profit. But now, in this new era of electric mobility, Africa has the rarest of opportunities to lead. China may have arrived first. Europe may still be chasing relevance. But in the end, this story is no longer about who got here first. It's about who stays, who builds, and who empowers. And that power, real power, comes not from selling vehicles, but from controlling the roads, the batteries, the networks, and the narrative. The battle for Africa's roads is no longer just an auto war. It's a war of influence, innovation, and independence. And in that war, Africa is not the prize. Africa is the player. The next global auto empire is not rising from Detroit, Stuttgart, or Shanghai. It's rising from Lusaka, Nairobi, Accra, and Kampala. And whether the world is ready or not, Africa is about to drive the future.